Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to Overwatch Central. So one of the things that I really like about watching the Overwatch League are seeing all of these heroes and combinations being used, but more specifically, how one single hero can be played in many different fashions. You have the obvious stuff like a really aggressive dive with a really aggressive Winston, or much more of a conservative style depending on what map you're on, and just the rest of your team and what they're doing. You see these teams basing themselves around trying to be the best diving team within the league, and also you have teams like Dallas and Houston and kind of Mayhem as well. They try and get away from the dive because frankly they're not very good at it, so they play different strategies in place of that, hence why you have the J-Krat stuff going on, and Dallas Fuel running the Orisa Hog combo. The colour of Overwatch is always something that I've been really interested in, and today I want to talk about TRACER specifically. TRACER is one of the most important heroes within the game right now and probably will be for the remainder of Overwatch's lifespan. She is the poster girl after all, but I want to talk about the way she is played from different pros and how to really take that style and what you should be doing into your own games regardless of your rank. You could literally look at every single player that plays TRACER in the Overwatch League and below all the way to, you know, the top 500, but you can sort of break them down into 3 areas, and that's what we're going to do in this video, giving a few examples as we go along. The first is your typical assassin style TRACER that you see, and I guess a really good example of this is Carpe for Philadelphia Fusion. Philadelphia Fusion are a team that is full of individual talent that could really perform at the highest levels. They arguably have some of the best DPS players on their team, with the synergy between Carpe and Shadowburn being amazing, and when it comes to that straightforward dive, they're the best team in the West when it comes to it with the DPS. And they narrowly lose out to the Koreans like Birdring and Prophet for London Spitfire especially. But Carpe is your de facto TRACER player that you're going to see that wants to get into the backline of the enemy to try and get those kills, and is very much a lone wolf in how he approaches the game. And you'll learn this a lot when you look at other TRACERs as well, that you don't typically see the TRACER running with the team as such. You can see TRACERs going on really big flanks, trying to hide behind the enemy. If you have a successful push, they can push ahead and then try and hide behind some scenery with their TRACER bomb, try and find where the Zenyatta is and just basically mow him down. Considering how Zenyatta was so meta in the previous sort of stage of Overwatch League with the Mercy, it was a really key target for TRACER to try and kill. And I wanted to start with this one because it is the most straightforward. I'm not going to milk this as being, oh, this is like crazy analysis. This is what you're typically going to see out of a lot of TRACERs. The next 2, I think, are quite interesting ways of going about it. So we have the assassin style I went over, which is very typical of TRACER and Genji's as well, bearing in mind. The next style is much more of an objective way of playing TRACER. I think the best TRACER that plays in this sense is certainly Soon for LA Valiant. However, the example I really want to give here is a match with Philadelphia Fusion, actually with Carpe, with LA Gladiators, and it's actually Surefire that I want to highlight here. It's on the last point of Numbani, and so far we have been seeing Philadelphia stomp through this stage, and they have so much time at the end of this map. Now, of course, the advantage does go to Gladiators here, much like a lot of these maps, because the spawn distance is a lot closer for the defending team, so they can basically reinforce a lot quicker and try and stagger out what Fusion want to do. But the thing that really caught my eye when looking over this gameplay myself was how Surefire was just kind of cleaning up a lot of the time. He wasn't going into the backline to try and kill Philadelphia's Zenyatta. First of all, Boombox will kill him. Boombox is a tremendous Zenyatta. But you also have Neptuno on the Mercy that will be going back to sort of look after him. That's one of the big issues, is that a lot of these Zenyatas at the highest tier can kind of look after themselves, and if they can't, the Mercy is on quick hand to keep them alive. And now that Lucio is going to become much more meta, and this might be the kind of lineup that you see, the Lucio is going to be able to peel for the Zenyatta a lot easier, I suppose. But in this sort of gameplay, we're seeing Surefire just sort of sitting in the back. We actually don't really see much of his perspective at all, because what he's doing is basically sitting back and almost letting the dive come in, and then Shaz and Big Goose are basically going to call to Surefire, say that they're being dived, and he's going to come in and clean up Philadelphia Fusion one by one. And so what happens then is the dive for Philadelphia starts coming in bit by bit. Shadowburn goes in on his own, Fraggy jumps in, gets killed immediately, which is Fraggy tradition, to be honest. But generally you have this sort of sense that on defense, instead of the TRACER typically trying to go into the enemy's backline and try and pincer attack them, I suppose, the TRACER in this situation is actually sat back a little bit and trying to clean up and peel for her supports. They're going to get dived in that situation. And I feel like this is a really important way to try and play the game at this point. So you have one TRACER that really focuses on the backline supports, trying to kill those before fights even started. Then you have the Tracers that are trying to disassemble a dive as it's coming in, either by killing the tanks, demeching the Diva, trying to kill the DPS if they're coming in one by one, which is what we saw Philadelphia Fusion actually doing, and probably one of their biggest weaknesses once they start to lose a bit of momentum. But the third type is certainly for the arguably best Tracer within the league single-handedly, and that would be Sabiobi. Sabiobi is a New York Excelsior amazing Tracer player, but he doesn't play really in the two styles that we've just mentioned. Of course, he does aspects of that by going into the backline and also cleaning up the rest of the attacking team. But the two styles that we just mentioned, one attacking the supports, one attacking the tanks as they're coming in, I suppose, Sabiobi actually goes for the enemy Tracer. Now this is really interesting considering that, as I said, there are different ways to play this hero. Some try and go to the backline, some try and sit back and try and bait the tanks to try and get a good amount of ult charge going in. But Sabiobi actually is watching what the enemy Tracer's doing, wants to shut them down, and then that opens up a lot more space for New York Excelsior to just dismantle the enemy team completely. But it typically starts with Sabiobi being, actually, I want to take you down, sir. I don't care about your backline. You're my target. And that puts a tremendous amount of pressure on the Tracer to A, do what their win condition is by either killing the supports or trying to clear the rest of the enemy team, but also they have Sabiobi to worry about that's just harping over them like a vulture. And really, this is the style that I think is going to be very difficult for people to try and mimic. This is a very individual style of play that I think has really surprised and excited a lot of people watching it. And this is why people really like to talk about Sabiobi and how good of a Tracer he is. And he is tremendous to watch. I think the best sort of example for this is watching a control map with any Tracer that's been played and just watching what both of the Tracers are trying to do. See what happens to the kill feed, which Tracer dies first. You can take this for any game, but you can really work out how players want to play Tracer, and I think it comes down to comfort as well. I mean, Jake gets memed on a lot for playing the Junkrat, but in like the playoff position finals, I suppose I would call it, when they were playing Boston, you did see Jake actually picking up quite a bit of Tracer here and there, and he did alright. It wasn't a standout performance, but he did what he felt he needed to do. And when you sort of face off a striker, watching how these two play, obviously Jake's going to be a bit more conservative, play around his team and the objective, because that's typically the kind of player that Jake is. But also when you have striker who is predominantly a Tracer player and a very good one at that, they're going to try and sort of push themselves as far as they can go to try and get those plays and those picks. And I really find that really interesting, not just with Tracer, but all of the heroes. But if you're looking at this hero and trying to find different styles of playing her, I would break it down into these three styles. You have the Assassin, which, as I said, is the de facto way to play Tracer, trying to get picks in the backline, trying to kill the squishies on the enemy team, just to thin them out one by one. Then you have much more of a team playing, objective-based playing peel Tracer that's all about trying to be the counter dive as the enemy dives coming in. You'd predominantly play this on defense, but can actually work as well if you're on like a payload and trying to move it along. You can orbit in the objective and just try to clear stuff up when it comes in. And finally, you have the Sabiobi way of playing the game, which is just completely shutting down whatever the enemy Tracer wants to do. But that also takes knowledge into knowing what the enemy Tracer does, either between being aggressive or being the soon style of Tracer that we have seen as well. But that's how I would break it down in its most basic format. There are infinite kind of categories you can put these Tracers under, but this is how I want to break it down. This is how I feel is a really good way of trying to understand what a Tracer's win condition is, and hopefully you enjoyed this video and learned a lot as well. I kind of want to do more videos like this, really talk about the Overwatch League, the style, the colour of the play that we're seeing, because there's some tremendous Overwatch being played, and whilst it's very hard to mimic ourselves as players in ladder, I do think it's quite interesting to talk about. But let me know what you think, and until next time, take care, we'll see you then.